on this Wednesday night, a push from within the ranks.
The Liberal Party is strong and united.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau emerges from a caucus meeting standing tall.
My colleagues need to turn the knives outwards and not inwards.
But some MPs who want him gone have given him a deadline. The Bank of Canada's key interest rate cut again.
Our focus is to maintain low, stable inflation.
How the outcome of America's election could affect Canada's economy. Missing and murdered Indigenous women. The timeline to search through a Manitoba landfill. And a baller of an auction. How an MLB superstar's historic home run ball fetched a record amount.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. The Prime Minister faced critics within his own caucus today, spending several hours in a meeting with Liberal MPs focused on questions about his leadership. Justin Trudeau emerged to say his party is strong and united. That meeting was not open to the media, but Global News has learned some MPs who believe Trudeau has become a liability to the party gave him a deadline of October 28th. Mackenzie Gray begins our reporting on what we know about the leadership challenge and the message Trudeau was given behind closed doors.
What are you going to tell them in caucus today?
The message to the rebels was clear. Put up or shut up.
There's what would you call it, some palace drama going on right now, and that takes us away from the number one job, which is focusing on Canadians.
Cabinet wanting the drama done, but some backbenchers less convinced Justin Trudeau can stay.
I think it's hard to come to a conclusion on anything at this moment in time.
I'm just going to go in there, I'm going to make my mind a blank and just soak it all in.
And when the door closed on the private meeting, the real conversation started. Sources tell Global News the Prime Minister started off by speaking for 30 minutes, reflecting on where he and his caucus are politically. Then 50 different MPs spoke, some wanting him to stay on, others telling Trudeau to quit, including New Brunswick MP Wayne Long.
I'm comfortable. I spoke truth to power. I think I've articulated what I feel needs to be done.
Long, one of 3 MPs who publicly confirmed they signed a letter asking for Trudeau to resign, which was given to the Prime Minister. And in it, a deadline. Decide by October 28th if you're quitting. There was no threat of what will happen if he doesn't. And a source says what the PM got had no names on it, leaving Trudeau to tell caucus he's not convinced he should quit.
A rousing show of confidence.
Leading to this.
The Liberal Party, as is the Liberal government, totally united.
Despite the front bench ovation, some of those sitting further back aren't as sure.
I'm still reflecting. It was a great conversation this morning and lots to think about.
The minister who called the push to take out Trudeau garbage believes the PM will survive.
I think has been simmering for some time, and it's important for people to get it out. This isn't a code red situation, and the Prime Minister can sure as hell handle the truth.
And if that happens, Wayne Long admits Liberals will need to get in line.
People need to, really rally behind him or get out of the way.
Frustrated Liberals have told Global News one of the reasons they want Trudeau out is a lack of new policy ideas, Donna, something that will be addressed in part tomorrow when major cuts to the number of permanent residents admitted to Canada will be announced.
Okay, Mackenzie Gray, thanks. Our chief political correspondent, David Akin, is with me now. David, what do you make of all of this? These rogue MPs, we don't know who they all are, of course, giving this deadline of October 28th.
That's right. We do not know who they all are. We know there's more than 20. There's less than 30 at this point. It might be what I would call a muted mutiny of sorts. Most of Trudeau's detractors continue to prefer that anonymity because they're worried that if they fail to dislodge Trudeau, that he will not sign their nomination papers for the next election. There also is no clear leadership rival behind this. This is not Paul Martin trying to knock Jean Chrétien off the throne. Still, there is a big question. If that deadline comes and goes and Trudeau's still on the job, what will the rebels do? The letter did have that ultimatum that something had to happen by October 28th, but there was no or else clause in it. Donna?
Interesting. And David, this doesn't change the fact that Justin Trudeau is unpopular with many Canadians. Is there a sign that he's prepared to do something to try to address the concerns that these Liberal MPs have who want him to go?
Yes, almost all the MPs we spoke to said there is the expectation that Trudeau will respond to his critics, but that may not be until next Wednesday's caucus meeting, and that's 2 days after this deadline. Now, announcing a major new policy, as the government plans to do tomorrow with some new immigration targets, That may appease his detractors somewhat, but I've talked to some of those anonymous critics, and many of them say Trudeau had his chance to change. He's had his chance to lead in a new direction. Anything he does now, too little, too late. They want a new leader. Donna?
Okay, David Akin in Ottawa. Thanks, David. The governor of the Bank of Canada delivered another interest rate cut today and said Canadians can breathe a sigh of relief. The bank's key lending rate is down 0.5% to 3.75%. This is the fourth consecutive cut since June, when inflation was running high and the Bank of Canada rate was at 5%. Since then, inflation has cooled. Anne Gaviola looks at the effect that's having and how long it might last.
With this new rate cut, it gives us a lot more room to go for homes which are slightly priced higher than what we were going for earlier.
Pratima and Pramod are hoping to buy their first house in Toronto. With the central bank's benchmark interest rate now below 4%, the couple feels it might actually happen.
I'm also mindful of the fact that every time there's an interest rate cut, there is also a little bit more competition in the market, and there could be a price surge.
Many current homeowners also welcoming the news, with the cut working out to a decrease of about $28 per month for every $100,000 in a variable rate mortgage, according to lowestrates.ca. With the economy slowing and inflation cooling to below the central bank's target of 2% in September.
Now our focus is to maintain low, stable inflation. We need to stick the landing.
It expects inflation to stay close to 2% and for businesses and households to continue with budget-conscious spending before picking up in 2025.
If the economy evolves broadly in line with this forecast, we anticipate cutting our policy rate further to support demand and keep inflation on target.
They might cut by 25 in December again. This might be a one-time 50 basis point move.
But there are wild cards on the horizon, global factors, including the upcoming U.S. presidential election.
Our analysis suggests that there's going to be much weaker economic activity in Canada in the event of a Trump victory versus a Harris victory, both in terms of what the tariff impacts are going to be on the Canadian economy, but also weaker overall U.S. economic activity and global economic activity.
The Bank of Canada's last interest rate announcement this year is December 11th, and a lot can happen between now and then. Anne Gaviola, Global News, Toronto.
In Turkey, at least 5 people have been killed and 22 others wounded in an apparent terror attack at the headquarters of a defense and aerospace company. Explosions and gunfire could be heard at state-run Turkish aerospace industries on the outskirts of Ankara. That plant produces armed drones and fighter jets. No group has claimed responsibility. Turkey's interior minister says a woman and a man armed with assault weapons were killed and claimed Kurdish fighters were likely behind the attack. Israel intensified strikes on Lebanon today, hours after expanding orders for civilians to get out of harm's way. The IDF carried out at least 4 strikes on Lebanon's southern coastal city of Tyre overnight and today, targeting what it says are Hezbollah command and control centers. Hezbollah has confirmed that the cleric thought to be the heir apparent of Hassan Nasrallah was killed in an Israeli attack on Beirut nearly 3 weeks ago. Hashem Safadin, who was about 60, was a cousin of Nasrallah and was expected to take over running the militant group. In Gaza, the Hamas-run health ministry says Israeli strikes killed at least 42 people today. Israel is tightening its siege on northern Gaza. Thousands of Palestinians have been forced to flee again, though to where is unclear. The World Health Organization says the mass displacement and lack of access to the north means its polio vaccination program has been put on hold. In France, the woman at the center of a mass rape trial spoke today for the first time since that trial began. Gisèle Pellicot says she cannot comprehend how her now ex-husband could betray her so completely. He has admitted to deeply disturbing crimes, drugging and raping her when they were married, and inviting dozens of other men in the village to rape her too, and videotaping the crimes. 51 men are on trial. As Mike Armstrong reports, Pellicot has waived her right to anonymity in hopes she can give courage to other rape victims.
It is a trial that has turned sadness and shock into inspiration. Gisèle Pellicot was cheered leaving the courtroom. The trial could have been conducted behind closed doors and her identity protected. She chose instead to face the men accused of raping her publicly. On the stand Wednesday, Pellicot looked at her husband in the face, she said, for the first time since the trial began. Quote, "Today I talked to him," she said. "We have 50 years together. I was a happy wife. We have 3 children and 7 grandchildren. My life has been turned upside down. You chose to do this." Pellicot told the court she has decided not to be ashamed, that she did nothing wrong. It is the 51 men on trial, she said, who should be ashamed. Now, the couple lived in a village in southern France. Pellicot thought happily. It was a police officer 4 years ago who told her what had been happening. Her husband has since admitted on the stand to what he'd been doing. Dominique Pellicot would contact men online, telling them they could sleep with his wife. He would then drug her and let them rape her while she was unconscious. He also filmed the rapes. It went on for 9 years. Gisèle Pellicot testified she never suspected someone she loved was drugging food he'd prepared. Quote, "I thought, wow," she said, "I'm lucky to have a husband who looks after me like this." The accused range in age from 26 to 74, and most, like this man, deny raping Pellicot.
Je vois une femme allongée sur le côté.
He says he saw a woman on her side and didn't know she'd been drugged. "I don't consider myself a rapist," he says. Now, some of the accused men's spouses have testified in the trial, standing up for their character. Pellicot addressed those women in court Wednesday. Quote, "The profile of a rapist is not someone met in a parking lot late at night," she said. "A rapist can also be in the family, among our friends." Now, the case has sparked national outrage in France and a debate over what constitutes consent. That is happening because Pellicot waived her right to anonymity. She's given a face to a case and made it impossible for people to ignore. Mike Armstrong, Global News, Montreal.
Donald Trump's former chief of staff does not mince his words. Coming up, why John Kelly says Trump fits the definition of a fascist.
I was feeling some kind of way following Eminem. I'm nervous, but on the surface I look calm and ready to drop bombs, but I keep on forgetting.
That is former U.S. President Barack Obama stealing some lines from Eminem's hit Lose Yourself. The rapper introduced Obama at a campaign rally for Kamala Harris in Detroit. And in his speech, Obama reminded the crowd how former President Donald Trump spread lies about voter fraud in 2020 and still refuses to accept the results. This time, Kamala Harris says her team is already preparing for the possibility that Trump will declare himself the winner, even if the results of the presidential election are not yet settled. And as Jackson Prosco reports, Trump's former chief of staff has issued a blunt warning. Trump, if he wins, will rule like a dictator.
As chief of staff. It's a dire warning from Donald Trump's former White House chief of staff. John Kelly laid out the dangers of a second Trump term in an interview with the New York Times.
He's certainly the only president that has all but rejected what America is all about.
Kelly spoke candidly about what he called Trump's authoritarian instincts.
So he certainly falls into the general definition of fascist, for sure.
He says that Trump heaped admiration on Adolf Hitler. A report in The Atlantic claims that as president, Trump was overheard saying, "I need the kind of generals that Hitler had."
He commented more than once that, that Hitler did some good things too. And of course, if you know history, again, I think he's lacking in that. But if you know what Hitler was all about, it'd be pretty hard to make an argument that he did anything good.
Powerful people once closest to Trump have repeatedly turned on him, labeling him a threat, including former top generals and military leaders.
What a stupid group of people they were. Mattis, Milley.
Trump has not exactly proven them wrong, openly vowing to use the military against his political opponents if re-elected.
The enemy from within, in my opinion, is more dangerous than China, Russia, and all these countries.
This is a window into who Donald Trump really
is.
Kamala Harris has seized on all of it, warning over and over that Trump is too dangerous and risky to hold office again.
So the bottom line is this. We know what Donald Trump wants. He wants unchecked power.
Yet there's little sign those fears have broken through with voters. Knowing what they know, they've stayed in their camps, leaving the race deadlocked with less than 2 weeks to go. Jackson Prosco, Global News, Washington.
The U.S. Secretary of Defense says there is evidence North Korean troops are in Russia supporting Russia's war on Ukraine. Lloyd Austin called it a very serious escalation and warned of consequences. South Korea's spy chief says 3,000 troops have been sent to Russia for training on drones and other equipment. Both Russia and North Korea have denied there's been any troop movement. U.S. officials say a deadly E. coli outbreak is likely linked to onions in quarter pounders sold at McDonald's. The fast food giant has taken the burger off its menu in at least 10 states. Nearly 50 cases of E. coli have been reported. One person in Colorado has died. 10 others have been hospitalized. There have been no reported cases in Canada. Ahead, families gather for the long-awaited search for their loved ones in a Manitoba landfill. A search will soon begin of a Winnipeg area landfill where it's believed victims of a serial killer were dumped. It's hoped that search will recover the remains of 3 women, including Morgan Harris and Mercedes Myron. Today, some of their family members gathered at the Prairie Green landfill. Melissa Ridgen reports, and a warning, some of the details in her story are disturbing.
One of the things that we promised you that we were going to do was search the Prairie Green landfill. And so today we are providing an update on the fact that we are searching Prairie Green for the remains of Morgan Harris and Mercedes Myron.
A moment these families have long waited for. Premier Wab Kinew confirming a search is on track to begin later this fall for Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, and possibly a third, still unidentified woman.
For our families, we're finally seeing that light at the end of the tunnel.
All victims of white supremacist Jeremy Skibitsky, who was sentenced this summer to life in prison, found guilty of luring vulnerable Indigenous women to his apartment, killing them in his bathtub to use their bodies for sex, then disposing of them in neighborhood dumpsters. Rebecca Contois was his last victim. Her remains, found in a dumpster and at another Winnipeg area landfill in 2022, triggered the police investigation that led them to Skibitsky and evidence of more victims. At the time, police said a landfill search was too difficult, risky, and costly, igniting a national movement calling for a search. The Manitoba and federal governments have committed $20 million each to start that effort, which could cost as much as $200 million and take 3 years. Daily costs include $3,600 a day for a project manager, $1,800 a day for media relations and an on-site elder, $1,200 a day for a forensic anthropologist, and search technicians, 14 of them, working 12-hour shifts to sort through 61,000 tons of rubble, making about $1,800 a day each.
It's been 2 years now that my mom's been laying in a landfill, as well as Mercedes Myron, and that's 2 years too long.
Families hopeful that it won't be much longer, that their loved ones are recovered to be given a proper burial. Melissa Ridgen, Global News, Winnipeg.
The biggest stars in the biggest cities, a baseball matchup for the record books, is next. LeBron James and his son Bronny made history in the Los Angeles Lakers NBA season opener last night. The pair was checked in together in the second quarter of the Lakers' win over Minnesota. Only a few other father-son professional athletes have ever played together. That includes baseball's Ken Griffey Sr. and Jr., who were sitting courtside for this event. History was made in baseball last night, too. A ball hit by Shohei Ohtani got a record price at auction, and the sale happened on the eve of one of the most anticipated World Series in decades. Eric Sorensen explains why fans and the league can't wait for the Los Angeles-New York matchup.
It is one of the iconic matchups in all of sports. The Yankees, the Dodgers, New York and LA in the World Series. Aaron Judge, the latest hero of the storied Bronx Bombers, versus baseball's biggest star, Shohei Ohtani. I feel like I finally arrived on this stage, says the Japanese prodigy. Last month, he became the first ever to steal 50 bases and hit 50 home runs. The fan who got the milestone homer is being sued by another who says he had it first. It's all understandable.
It is the actual 50th home run baseball hit by Shohei Ohtani.
That home run ball just sold at auction for $4.4 million US, the most ever for a baseball. And other records are sure to fall this week. Resale World Series tickets, more than $1,000 each, and TV ratings expected to more than double last year's World Series.
Getting a chance to play on the biggest stage and the biggest moment, I think that's going to be pretty cool to watch.
Aaron Judge is soft-spoken, but in complete admiration of his rival, Ohtani.
Hits for average, hits for power, the speed, impressive athlete, the best player in the game, and what an ambassador for this sport.
I'm very confident we'll be seeing a lot of tributes.
Dodgers Stadium honored Fernando Valenzuela, who died Tuesday. Valenzuela sparked Fernando Mania and starred in the last Yankees-Dodgers World Series in 1981, the era of Valenzuela and Reggie Jackson. Now, at long last, a rematch.
Just since I was a kid, my dad took me, and I continued the tradition taking my kids.
There's always that Yankee-Dodger thing.
The Yanks and Dodgers have met 11 times, more than any other teams in the Fall Classic, but it's been a long wait for the 12th meeting.
You think of the success of these two franchises, that it's now been 43 years is remarkable.
Over the years, baseball has lost some of its luster, but this year, the Boys of October may restore the wonder of America's pastime. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
That is Global National for this Wednesday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Your Canada is Greenwich, Prince Edward Island. We'd love to see your Canada. Please email it to globalnational@globalnews.ca. And thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow. Bye-bye.